Welcome back. Episode 5, Signals from the Deep. And a lot has happened since episode 4. The Seattle Kraken not only are in the playoffs, they take the first round series against the defending Stanley Cup champion, Colorado Avalanche. The first time a team in the National Hockey League has won their first playoff series against the defending Cup champs. That's a heck of a feather to have in your cap. And now into the second round against the Dallas Stars. And by the time we're recording this, the series is 1-1. Coming back home, coming back to Seattle, coming back to Climate Pledge Arena in front of the best fans in all of hockey. So a lot of exciting times. But what's is equally exciting is we got a heck of a guest on episode 5 today. And we're going to delve into this guy's past, his present, and future. JT Brown, a Burnsville, Minnesota native, played 7 long years in the National Hockey League, 365 games played, a NCAA national champion with the University of Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs. He is in his second year as your Seattle Kraken in-game analyst. And man, oh man, do I have a tough time keeping up with his style. Everybody welcome in JT Brown. JT, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Oh, thanks for having me. My question is why it took 5. I mean, could have got me on number 2 or 3 or, I don't know, I'm just messing with you. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great. Great. Everyone's very excited, and thanks for taking some time to join us today. I think the best place to start is, as I've kind of said with and asked of other guests, everybody has an introduction to hockey. What was yours?
For me, I think just growing up in Minnesota is the first thing, and obviously going out on the ponds and playing on the frozen ice. I mean, that's really how the love of hockey got started. Obviously, I think it's a little bit easier starting out in Minnesota. That's just the sport. So for me, it was a lot of my friends in the neighborhood. Their parents had already, been living in Minnesota. They had gone through the hockey. They were hockey parents, and I wanted to play what everybody else was playing, and in the wintertime especially, that was, just walking down to the local park, and they would have the rink flooded, and we would just go play all day after school. And I mean, that just, again, solidified the love of the game for me.
Do you think that that's even more special than it already is to be able to play on the outdoor rinks? Because, growing up in Chicago, for me, we had a pond in the back, never really froze it, never really played outdoors. I feel like the more into the future we get, I feel like playing outdoors is kind of almost a thing of the past. Is that kind of something you look back and you're nostalgic of?
Well, it's a little bit of both, I think, because you'll see every now and then on Instagram or, Twitter that somebody posts this epic backyard where I don't know how much they had to spend to make that backyard rink. Whereas, obviously in Minnesota, there's just so many different, whether it's a pond, like you said, in the backyard, or the park has its own little rink that they'll set up with a warming house outside. And, I just think of how much time we spent outside. I don't know if they're necessarily doing that anymore. Even down to just your local practices would be, you'd have a couple of them inside at the local rink, but you'd probably have 1 to 2 of them every other week outside. Yeah. And, those were days where I definitely did not want to go to practice, but, the fun, throwing the sticks in the middle and, just getting the whole neighborhood together and just playing those games. You definitely look back at, some of the best times. And like I said earlier, just that's how the love of the game kind of unfolded for myself.
Yeah. And your career, let's just take everybody through it. Rosemount High School, you were a standout there, put up almost 3 points a game in a couple of years there. So that was not bad.
All right.
Then on to Waterloo to play for the Waterloo Blackhawks. 113 points in 96 games played, playing under PK O'Hanley and having an incredible run there. 2 years at the University of Minnesota Duluth, 84 points in 81 games. I'll tell you what, folks, to put up over a point a game in college hockey is tough, especially in that division. So, hey, this goes to show your ability. National champion. You were the tournament MVP with the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs that year. And then you went on to play 7 years, in the National Hockey League after being undrafted. Tampa Bay Lightning, Anaheim Ducks, Minnesota Wild, 72 points in your career, and then you finished up playing in Sweden. When you look back on your career, there's a lot of great stuff there, some incredible achievements. Anything stand out for you, either in your younger years or junior years, or eventually whenever you got to the league?
I think every step of the way has its moments, and if you look back at the high school time, I mean, it's probably one of the most fun times I've had playing hockey, and that's with the group of kids that I had played from mites all the way up to to high school, and obviously going through, had an opportunity to leave to go to another high school or a private school, or maybe even go play juniors at my last year. But for me, it was very important to just keep playing with my friends that I had grown up with. Your lifelong friends through that, and obviously juniors was a little bit of it's kind of a wake up call. I mean, as well, obviously coming from going from high school to now you're in the USHL and you're playing against some really tough competition. You're away from home, kind of just the growing up period of trying to figure that out in the USHL, and obviously college. I mean, winning a national championship was very special. Obviously, that's the only time I've ever won at the whatever the highest level at that time that I'd play it at. Be able to win and to be the last one standing it's an accomplishment. But I think even more so too, the second year when we didn't win, it kind of just showed you how hard it is to win in this game, and that you can't take anything for granted. No matter how good your team is, or I mean, we've seen it even in the NHL. It doesn't matter once you get into the playoffs. Especially in the college ranks where you got one shot, you got one game. If you're not the better team that night, you're going home. So, a lot of it's still the growing up process. And again, like I said, you can't get away with winning. I always will remember the overtime win versus Michigan. Sorry if there's any Michigan fans listening to this. But no, I mean, obviously great times. And then obviously going into the pro ranks, I mean, you just meet so many different people from so many different places, and, being able to play in a Stanley Cup final, that's got to take the cake. Obviously you can look at your first point, your first goal, first game in the playoffs, but to make it to the end again shows just how hard it is to get to that point, and then to win, it's even harder, right? So It's just kind of the process of going through. And for me, I've had there's no regrets when you look back at the career. Obviously, there's only one winner each year, right? Yeah. There's one team that can win it all, and I think I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. I've got to meet a bunch of great people, and obviously, doing what I've done throughout my career has got me to where I am now. So I mean, it's been one heck of a career for myself, and we're on to the next chapter.
You got that right. Just a couple of more in-depth questions. In Waterloo, played for PK O'Hanley. I played for PK as well. A hard-nosed coach. Pulls no punches. It was always wanted to ask you, was that a type of coach, regardless of whether it was PK O'Hanley or Coach X or Y or Z, with the player that you were and kind of your psychology and mindset and mentality? Did you like a coach that was on you, that was yelling at you, that was constantly pushing you, or did you like a guy that was maybe a little bit more pat on the back, let's go for type of stuff?
I think there's definitely a time and a place for both, right? I think for myself, especially with the path that I took, obviously not drafted, kind of moving through, didn't have a college scholarship when I was going through in Waterloo. It was kind of that push that I needed. I also needed to grow up. You need to figure out what it's like outside of high school when, again, when you're playing for your city and you have maybe one of the better players on the team, but now there's all those players were the best player on their team at one point, and now they're coming together into this league, and to have a coach keep pushing you, and sure, there's times where you probably didn't take it the right way, but I think looking back on it, I definitely thought that was kind of a real pinnacle moment for me, going through that to get to where I wanted to go, to keep pushing myself along the way. And then I've had coaches where it's not necessarily they yell at you, or they want to sit down and have that conversation and just talk to you about different things, and it works. I think it depends. I think that's all on coaching too. I think as a coach, you have to understand your players. You got to be able to get into their mindset, and not every player is the same. You might be different than me.
Yeah,
I'm going to be different from the next person down the row. Like, at the end of the day, you got to figure out what each player needs and what is going to get the best out of them. And I think there are plenty of times and situations where you got to be straight-nosed, hard on, whatever, whether it's a rule, whether it's, hey, you missed the forecheck, now we got to put you on video, we got to do all of that. Or, there's times where, hey, let's pull them back, let's go let's do a one-on-one video session. Let's talk about this, just coach and I versus, in front of everybody else. So I don't think there's a problem with either. I think it's all just the way that each player, and that's on the coach, right, to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. You played in your hometown, Minnesota. Before we delve into that, you played in some pretty warm climates in Tampa and Anaheim.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the tough question of which you liked more, or just what was it like playing hockey where, there are days where you're going to the rink in flip-flops and shorts for practice.
That's pretty much every day, right? Like, obviously, I would say it's Tampa. Yeah. Just spent the majority of my career there. Yeah. It was a shorter stint in Anaheim. I enjoyed, being in the Cali sunshine as well. But I think the best part for me is I did not have to be in Florida during the summer times when it's very sticky. You can't go out to the mailbox without leaking sweat. So skipped those months and went back to Minnesota. But definitely enjoyed playing in Tampa, especially too. Obviously, they gave the first opportunity in the NHL and kind of got my professional career started. So obviously, I always will have a special place for Tampa.
You play for the Minnesota Wild. That's got to be the dream of every Minnesotan growing up, and hockey is religion in Minnesota. What was that like, being able to have the opportunity to play for your team and represent them, having grown up probably wanting to do that your whole life?
Oh, it was cool. I think when I did it was probably the best time too. I think I don't know if I'd have been ready at the pro level to go right into playing for my hometown, but I think obviously getting those years in Tampa, the time in Anaheim, to be able to get used to the pro game, get used to the differences, and also just the demands, right? Like if you're at your hometown, not that it's always bad, but you got friends like, hey, can we get this? Can we get that? You're kind of getting pulled all over. But I feel like as I got older, I got more familiar with the game and mature. I'm like, okay, yeah, well, we got it. Well, guess what? There's a Ticketmaster too. They got, you got every once in a while, you got to go get, obviously family and friends and then get to the first game in Minnesota. I'm like, there's 41 home games. Like, at the end of the day, if Lexi's not going to the game, sure, I can hand you some tickets. But other than that, you might have to go on Ticketmaster. I'm going to tell you that right now. It might be a little harder in year one.
Oh, that's awesome. And then your final year of pro hockey over in Sweden. What was that like?
Oh, it was awesome. I think the only downside was obviously it was still during COVID and not being able to experience fully what their fandom is. Obviously, I've been able to see videos of it. Still see some of what's going on over there right now, and that's the one thing I missed. I mean, when you think of the soccer atmosphere, whether it's the cheering, the standing, that section or that kind of mentality in the stands is during the hockey game, which we don't see over here when it comes to the games. Obviously, there's great fans and they're loud. I think it's just a different level, maybe even a more intimate level. And being able to go over there and kind of experience that was, especially at the end when we got towards the playoffs and they started allowing some more fans in, it was pretty special. But I think for me, awesome time going over the player. The hockey was great. Yeah. But also, I think one of the other big things was just being able to go into another culture, right? Like go into a different country, live there. Obviously, don't speak the language, but to kind of be able to communicate, get to meet people from another place as well, become friends, and then obviously, like I said, the hockey was fantastic. The people were great. The city I lived in was awesome, and I just thought at that point I was going to move on to the second part of my career, and thankfully Seattle Kraken came calling, and obviously we know what the future held afterwards, but for myself it was a real good opportunity to say, hey, you know what, maybe I can play a couple more years in Europe, and we'll see if I'll go there by myself the first year, and then maybe the next year we bring the kids and Lexi over and we kind of do a couple years in Europe. I thought it would have been awesome. That was the original plan going over there, and things changed though.
Yeah, right. You got plan A until here comes plan B. Inspiration is always something that is something I'm very passionate about. What inspires people to do what they do, or different role models or inspirations in their life. Your dad, Ted Brown, played at North Carolina State. Was a 1979 first-round draft pick by the Minnesota Vikings in the NFL draft, 16th overall. Ended up playing 104 games in the National Football League, over 4,500 yards as a running back. What was his influence on you?
Well, I mean, I think just starting off, obviously, having him be a professional athlete, it definitely pushed me to want to be an athlete as well. And I think the best part though for me, and why, and you pick hockey when my dad played in the NFL. Like, why didn't you want to play that sport? And I think for me, it was just, I don't want to say that he couldn't teach me when it came to hockey, but he didn't know. I mean, he's from North Carolina at the time. He didn't really play. He didn't skate, still doesn't skate very often. But he's coached me in other sports. And at the same time, I just sometimes, maybe even though he has the right things to say, coming from your dad, sometimes you're like, man, I don't want to hear that. Right. Yeah. So I think playing hockey was just one of those things that I was able to continue to just keep pushing and be myself and not have to be necessarily Ted Brown's kid playing football again. I kind of wanted to just push away from that. And again, for me, it was awesome because he didn't push me to play, whether it was baseball, which was a sport he played, obviously football as well. And none of the sports he pushed me to go into. So for me, to be able to, one, have that drive to get to where, my dad got to, but then at the same time, I'm like, he supports me playing hockey over, the sport that he played growing up and that he was able to make a living off of. So I think that was a kind of a real good spot for myself and wanting to play hockey, just having that support, even though it wasn't the sport he picked. I'm sure, as he was growing up, he's like, man, that'd be great if my son, if he followed in my footsteps and, played in the National Football League as well. But, for me, there was no push. And I've told the story a couple times. And then when I finally decided to pick hockey as my first sport, like this is what I want to do, it was in high school. And up until then, you played soccer, you played baseball, you played every sport you could possibly have time for.
Right.
But I kind of told him, like, hey, Dad, like, we got to talk. Like, I don't think I'm going to play football anymore. I'm done. I want to focus on hockey. And he just looked at me. He's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, what? Like, how do you know? How do you know this? And he's like, well, I've known since you were about 5 years old. When we have a football practice at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking you up. Like, hey, you got to get up. It's time to go to practice. But if it was a hockey practice, an hour earlier at 6 in the morning, because obviously when you're younger, you have the earlier ice times. Right. He goes, you were already awake, waking me up to say, hey, Dad, we got to go to hockey practice. He's like, I knew from the jump that hockey was the sport that you were going to end up choosing and that you wanted to play. So obviously he outsmarted me on that one. I thought I was going to have a difficult conversation, with my pops about that one. Yeah. But, again, it's just that having that support system, obviously, with the, how much it takes to just play the sport and to be at practice and get yourself to point A to point B to tournament this. And it takes a lot, obviously, whether, family, friends bringing you to practice, carpooling together, it takes like a village to be able to bring everybody together. So, obviously having that support from, my dad, my mom, obviously siblings as well, throughout playing was really important to me.
Yeah, no, family is number one. Especially when it comes to that. I mean, you're right. I mean, it absolutely does take a village, and going on the road for tournaments and waking up early, like you said, and, doing all those different things. I mean, that is of utmost importance if you want to take the next step. And, certainly you had an incredible career, and, I know that you give a lot of that credit to a lot of the people that were around you.
Yeah, I mean, it does take. I just think back on all the times where, hey, my family's taken, the neighborhood kids to the game, and then the next game, it's their parents were taking them through. And I think that just being able to have that support all the way around is fantastic. And, the other thing I will say that's for as far as inspiration goes is, like, I remember one thing my dad always told me was play hard, play smart, and play together. Because it doesn't matter what sport you're playing. It could be baseball, could be hockey, football, but it still applies.
Right.
Play smart. You got to know what you're doing. You got to play together. You got to play as a team. But at the end of the day, he never judged me on how many points I got in a game. Never had a conversation about, hey, you had a bad game. You were -4. Why'd you make this pass? Why'd you do this? He could sit there and tell me how hard I worked. Right. It's like, I can look at that and see in any sport you're playing how much effort you gave. And at the end of the day, I'm like, so you look at how my game evolved and how I played the game of hockey, it was always going. It was always 100% going. I'm like, because that was instilled for me, you got to work hard. No matter what, because that's not what I'm going to get yelled at for in the car. It's not going to be because, man, you didn't have any points tonight. It was going to be because you didn't give 100% effort out there on the ice. And again, when we talk about how much time it took to get you to the rink, to go to practices, to go to this tournament, the money that I was spending, he's like, if you're not going to work hard, then why are we doing it?
Yeah.
So plenty of different inspirations growing up. And again, I wouldn't be here without all of those people, whether it's coaches, family, friends, and, obviously just thankful for that.
Speaking of coaches, is there one coach that you look back in your career and you're like, yeah, that guy had a pretty profound effect on me as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to pick Rick Sainty. He was my coach all the way from as young as I could go. We started actually playing games until right before then high school. Obviously, we had the high school coach, so all the way up until the Bantam time, just the amount of time and how much learning and growth you were able to go from them. Actually, you might not get happy with me for saying this, but I still remember, quote to the day, he's like, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I'm like, I don't know if this is a great, you can't be telling him that. But at the same time, he's like, hey, you got to do what you got to do to get the edge. And I'm like, you know what? All right, we're going to go out there every single game. We're going to do whatever we have to do to win because we're going to win. So, yeah, that one always sticks with me. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Yeah, especially when it comes to face-offs, right?
Exactly. Even if you're not cheating on the face-off, you're probably not going to win it. So,
you went from being a prolific scorer at the high school level, junior level, college level, and then you get into the National Hockey League, and it's a little bit of a different role for you. I've always been interested in guys that have great careers. They're point guys. You're the best guy. And then you get to the NHL, and everyone's really, really good. So was there a time in your career where you're like, okay, maybe I'm not going to be a guy that scores 40 goals like I maybe did back in junior, and I got to kind of find a little bit more of a niche role? Although, as you said earlier, to your credit, the work ethic was something that was always there for you. But was there a moment where you're like, okay, maybe I have to adjust or, look at my game a little bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question I posed to myself was, do you want to play in the National Hockey League? Well, the answer was obviously yes. And there can only be so many players playing in the top six. That's just a numbers game. You look at who they have already in position, who's in the roster coming up. Well, what can I do to separate myself from the next person? And what does your team need? What type of role does your team need? Where do I fit? Now, I could have tried to continue to score and played a different game. Maybe it wouldn't have worked out. I don't know. Like you said, everyone is a fantastic player in the NHL. They've all were a scorer at some point. They were doing something that nobody else could do. But for me, it just kind of sunk in that when I was with Tampa, I'm like, you know what? I can find my role here. Mm-hmm. Play hard, hit everything that moves, drop the gloves occasionally as well, which I enjoyed doing anyway. So
it's a fury.
So that was always the fun part. But it was just kind of an honest conversation with yourself. And I think you have to go through that. You have to be able to be honest with yourself. Where are you? Where do you want to be? Well, for me, I wanted to be in the National Hockey League. I didn't want to go back down to the American Hockey League, maybe play a couple more years because I had a pretty decent first year outside of an injury in the American Hockey League as well. But for me, that wasn't the goal. The goal is to do whatever it takes to play in the National Hockey League. And, I was able to make a pretty good career out of doing that. So for me, everybody wants to be the one to score that OT thriller, the game-winning goal. But, for myself, I found the role and I just took it over. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to play. And it worked out.
And that is, I think you talk about maturity. Like that to me speaks of absolute maturity because you have to completely kind of change, not change your game, but just accept something a little bit differently and knowing that there are roles on a team. And, there are some guys that aren't willing to do that, right? And you said you kind of made that decision. If I want to play in the National Hockey League, I got to play a certain way. And there are some guys that don't make that realization and they phase out or they never make it.
Well, it's tough, right? You go from playing 18, 19, 20 minutes a night and now you're hitting 8, 10 on a good day. So again, you could get upset with that. What motivates you? Mm-hmm. What makes you want to be in the National Hockey League? Do you want to be, do I want my stick in, the local store so that people can go buy it? Like, sure, that would have been great. But for me, the end goal was to play. I wanted to be in the national hockey. I wanted to be able to provide for my family. Obviously at the beginning I didn't have a family, but one day be able to provide for a family and to be able to do what I love again, because you got to remember it's still a game.
Yeah.
It's a great game, but at the end of the day, it was a game. So for me, it was like, what can I do to play as long as I possibly can? And then also to get paid doing it.
Getting paid doing what you love. Nothing better than that. Quickly, you mentioned the fisticuffs and that you enjoyed throwing some skin at some other guys every now and again. Was there a most memorable fight that you had? And then aside from that, what's going through your mind? Now, again, there's a lot of different situations. Your teammate gets hit in a bad way. You got to go stand up for him. There's a guy you just don't like. You're going back and forth. You're trying to keep them honest, not taking liberties on your players. But I think for you, like, how would you describe your mindset when you're in a fight?
Well, for the most part, I never did well, actually, there's a couple off the face off, but when he's like, hey, we're going to fight today. And I'm like, no, I don't, I need the wire to cross first. And usually that was either I hit somebody and they took exception to that, or they hit somebody on our team. And I'm like, all right, you know what? That's it. No more of that. We're going to defend our teammate here. So never really had those, like, just, I would say staged, but there's been a couple off the rip. Honestly, the one that stands out the most, actually, there's probably two. First would be I fought Radko Gudas, very good friend of mine.
Oh man,
yeah, he's a pretty tough customer as well. But he threw a body punch. Actually, threw quite a few body punches because we knew each other. Like, nobody was trying to actually hurt the other person. Like, we didn't really want to punch each other, but we both kind of looked at each other beforehand and we're like, hey, I know it's your job, it's my job too. We got to do it. Yeah, we got to fight. And he hit me with a body punch and, like, I was sucking wind. And now then I go back and I watch boxing, or you watch MMA and somebody gets hit in the stomach or the liver and you're like, okay, I've felt, somewhat of that, not even to that level. Right. And it dropped me to a knee. I went straight down on a knee. I was like, oh my God, okay, this is not good. And he was doing that as the friendly side, right? Like, not to go at the face. He was throwing body punches. So definitely took the L on that one. But then there's a couple of them where I just have fought some very tall individuals way outside of my division or class. But hey, you know what? Sometimes when the wires cross, they cross, and I'm stringing them out. We're going arm across at the shoulder, and holding on to shoulder pads, and I go to throw a right punch, and I realize that I am still like 3 inches away from his face. What are you going to do? Yeah. How are we going to, and again, it's not always about winning the fights. I probably didn't win majority of my fights, but it's all about being willing to do it and, setting the tone. Obviously, sometimes you need a game change. Some things aren't going your way. All right, well, I'm going to go lay a hit. They don't like it. All right, we drop the gloves, and now that builds some momentum for the team. But I think when I look at some of the fights, definitely the one where I fought, a really good friend of mine, and then I think he was 6'7", Ben Harper.
Oh yeah,
I think he's at 6'7". I'm only 5'10", so
man,
I'm pretty sure might have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure he's 6'7", and it was like, yep, you are still so far away from, like, you are not going to be
step ladder, right?
You're not going to be able to hit him. So hold on, dodge a little bit, grab both arms. All right, pat him on the back. All right, good fight. We're good. I'll take my 5, and we move on.
Well, look, I mean, you had an incredible career, not just to make it to the National Hockey League, but to play over 300 games, to have scored, to have fought, to have done a little bit of everything, and been a great teammate along the way. Seriously, it's a heck of a career. So
thank you.
Congratulations. And then life after playing. Did you always know you wanted to be in the broadcasting sphere?
No, I did not. I've streamed video games on Twitch, so I've kind of had somewhat, obviously being a player, you do interviews all the time, whether on camera or off camera. So I feel like there's somewhat of a comfort zone there. But, and obviously when got the call and, hey, would this be something you'd be willing to retire and, go into the next chapter? I was like, wow, I never really thought of doing in broadcast at all. But I think what sold me, obviously John and I did a mock game. I was still in Sweden. He's in Carolina. We want to see if it works. And it was fun. Like, it was so much fun to be able to call a game. And obviously didn't know a whole lot. Got a crash course with Ross 24 hours prior of, what to do, what not to do. And I still remember one of the first things he says, like, don't use the nicknames. He obviously used their real name. And I'm like, okay, well, we get to the game because I didn't want to cheat and do although if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Yeah. Just kidding.
Yeah, there you go.
But I didn't want to cheat, so I looked at the game, and it's Carolina versus Tampa. And I'm like, so you give me the one game that I know everyone on their team, and I only know them by nickname. So I can't say Andre Vasilevsky. Like, I just say Vazzy. Yeah. Like, it's getting that switch. So we were doing the mock, kind of just a test to see if it would work out, if they wanted to extend the contract or however, the back end works. They had to do their side of it. But I'm like, man, you guys give me the mock game and tell me not to use nicknames, but it's with the team that I played for. Yeah. Now I get why they did it, because it's comfortable with their team, kind of their systems, and how do you break that down. But, I had a lot of fun. Obviously knew there was a lot to learn, still is a lot to learn. Obviously getting to work with John and now Edzo as well. It's been a fantastic second year, and we just keep taking strides forward. So again, I didn't think it was something I didn't plan for it. Obviously in school, didn't take any broadcasting classes, but from the jump, I realized how fun this could be, and to be able to talk about hockey, and you like working with John, or I like being part of this organization and what the organization stands for. And for me, that was enough to make the jump. Obviously, I had never called a real game, didn't know what a real game was going to be like, only knew about calling off of my computer monitor and, being in completely different time zones. So I kind of just said, you know what, we're going to jump feet first. We're going to go all in on this, and obviously just be a sponge, be open to listen, be open for, whether it's criticism, whether it's, hey, you're doing this good, take that and keep running with it. So for me, again, like I said, don't know if it was like, I didn't say, hey, I had a dream to be on the broadcast team, but I'm sure glad that, the opportunity came, and also the opportunity that for me to just jump in, because I could have easily said, I don't know. This is something new. I've never done it. Mm-hmm. There's obviously nerves, or, scared to completely shift from, you've been playing hockey from 2 years old to the day I retired, which I actually don't remember how old I was exactly. Because technically, I know the years wise, we got 2 years and 32 is 30, but I might have been 30,
long time.
Whatever.
Long time.
I don't do numbers.
More than most.
Yes,
more
exactly.
Than most.
It's been a long 28 years of hockey, and now you're switching, right?
Yeah.
I've never been a numbers guy, but 28 years, and now you're jumping into something you have no idea what you're doing. I do know hockey, though. Yeah. And that's what I try to lean on, right? Yeah. Try to lean on those experiences.
Yeah. Did the gaming and streaming help in any way, just as far as maybe, now I know you're not directly, you're on camera, but it's not like that's the only thing you're doing, where at least you're gaming, you're playing a game, but like, did that help at all?
I think it did. Yeah. I think one, it was able to show them, being on camera, talking to, whether or not it was fans or people, and trying to hold that conversation, whether you can be comfortable in that situation. It's not the exact same, because obviously if it was, then I wouldn't be, first game, I'm like, man, I'm nervous. Like, what's going on? Yeah. How is this going to go? Yeah. But even now, I think there's definitely things that, you had to work on, you had to improve on, but I think it does help showing that you can be on camera. Obviously they can look at any interview as well, talking about hockey, but I think that also just shows that you can talk about anything. You can continue a conversation. You can, like I said, be comfortable doing multiple things. You got to multitask. That's the other thing that I found out that was really hard and weird, was having somebody talk into your ear while you were trying to talk about whatever and not lose your focus of what you were saying. That was probably the hardest thing, like right off the rip, that you wouldn't think is that hard, because obviously everybody got the earpiece in. You got them counting you down or telling you what's next, but like, how do you not lose your next train of thought, or like what you were trying to say when you got a little sound going in,
or telling you what's coming next when you're still finishing about what you're talking about now.
Yeah. So again, it wasn't easy, but I guess for me, it was just, being dedicated to put that same work ethic in that I played with hockey to this new venture and to this new opportunity. And, I believe in myself, and I believe that, if I put the work in, I'll be successful.
And how about any advice for either young broadcasters that are aspiring to make it to the National Hockey League level, or maybe even if there are some former players or players that are on hole 17 of their career and they want to get into it. Is there any advice that you'd give to them as far as things that you've learned in your early broadcasting career to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is what John told me, when I'm getting ready to, we're getting ready to do the first year, and he just said, be yourself. The people will know if you're putting on a persona for the game or for whatever you're calling. Like, just go in there and be yourself. And I think that it shows, and I think that shows with the chemistry that John and Edzo and I have on air. I don't know half of what they're talking about, and I don't pretend to know. Like, I remember, was it the Love Boat TV show, and they're talking about character of this, and they asked me if I know, or it was wrestling night in, where were we, Calgary, and they're naming wrestlers from the 70s and 80s. I'm like, guys, I do not know. So, no, I just think it's definitely, that's the fun part about it. And I just go out there and you just got to be yourself. They are them. They're not trying to be anybody outside. I mean, you would know too, right? Yeah. Like, you get to see your dad, and that's the same person.
Yeah.
That's on air as, when we're sitting there in the stands watching. Same thing with John when we're on air. That's the same John that we go sit in the stands and we watch practice, or we're going out to dinner. You're seeing that exact same person. So for me, that was the best thing for myself. Obviously, there's been great color analysts, but he's like, don't try to be them. Be yourself.
Yeah. You talk about working with Johnny and with Edzo. You touched on it a little bit, but how would you summarize working with them and the type of people that they are? There's a huge grin on JT's face right now, and I feel like anytime you bring up those two guys, that's just kind of the natural reaction. So give us your honest opinion on working with them and just them and the impact that they've had on you in your career so far.
Well, it's nonstop. It's fun. It's organized chaos. It's again, what you see on air is what you see every single day, or we see every single day, whether, again, we hear about the car rides home after a game. Like, they still will talk about the car rides home at the practice the next day. Like, this is literally our conversations every single day. Yeah. And again, it's been so fun to work with both of them, and it almost makes it not a job, right? Like, yes, you have requirements to come to the game, which makes it a job, but we're having fun together. We're getting to do something that we love. I still get to talk about the game and spread, different, your knowledge or my thoughts on a certain thing. And I think what's the best part is we don't always have to agree. We can have different opinions about a play, a penalty, what have you. But for us, it's all that chemistry and coming back together. And, I think for me, obviously getting the first full year with John, to be able to learn from him, watch how he watches practice, watch, look at what his notes look like. Mm-hmm. I'm on volume probably 8 of my notes. I'm still trying to figure it out. John's notes do not work for me. If anybody has seen a tweet from John, before the game where he takes his notebook out, it's got the glasses there, maybe a granola bar of some kind, his pen, highlighter, full on, and then the video of the thing. If you look at those notes, if you zoom in, I don't know how he can even tell what's on the piece of paper. And I'm standing 3 feet from him. Yeah. But he knows. That's his notes. Yeah. That's his process. And again, he's always saying, like, my notes might not be good for you. And they're not, because I can't read them.
Need a telescope.
Yes. But at the same time, like, going through that process and trying to learn, and again, just being able to take in all information. Then obviously this year, getting to work with Edzo as well, obviously, on the national level. And I personally think he's one of the best. I'm not just saying that because we're here, but I think he's one of the best, if not the best, in that position. So to be able to continue to see what he does, because John and I have different roles. He does play-by-play. I'm an analyst. Well, now I get to watch one of the best, in my opinion, do the same role, like be an analyst, see how he sees the game. And again, I think it also just broadens my horizons too, because yes, Edzo played in another era, so he has another viewpoint on something. So we just take as much information as possible. But again, the only word I can think of is fun, because it's nonstop action, especially with those two, which you've seen firsthand.
How about being between the benches? What's that been like, being ice level and doing your job from the best seat in the house?
Cold. That's the first word that comes to mind. It's a little bit colder down at ice level than it is up top. But no, it's really cool to be down there, especially I think now because I still know so many players on the ice, and whether it's a fist bump or the ref comes by and he says, "Hey, we've been listening to your game, like you've been doing good, keep up the work," and just being able to be on ice level, especially like you said, when you know a lot of people, whether it's an official or a player on. Well, I know players on the Seattle Kraken, but I also know players from basically every other team as well. So, kind of getting to see them out there and get to see it firsthand. But as far as the view, I mean, you realize again how fast the game is. When you're up on press row or you're up high, the game moves very slow. And now that can be a good thing, right? Like when you're trying to analyze something and the game's moving slower for you, you kind of can see where the play's developing. Obviously down there you will every now and then, players get up on the boards. You can't quite see around them. Some of the sight lines get taken away, but you get a real sense of like how the game is going when you're down at ice level. So it's been fun. It's definitely, like I said, a little bit colder, but at the same time, no, I really enjoy being down there as well, and getting all three of us together.
So you gotta have the longer pants that night, or still a little bit shorter, no socks, or?
Yeah, no, I get crap all the time because I'll be walking down, right in front of the locker room, getting ready to go on the bench, and they're like, "Not wearing socks?" And I'm like, well, technically I have socks on there, like the no-show socks, but right. I have to have a commitment to, I don't want to say looking good because you can look good without socks, but I like no socks, a little bit of ankle, but then that also.
Sometimes fashion hurts.
Yeah, that's the, right? See, there's a saying that I'm looking, fashion hurts sometimes, and
you pay the price.
Yeah, I'm not, I just don't plan on wearing socks anytime soon. Because I also don't wear dress shoes. Mm-hmm. I also committed myself after I retired. I said I don't want to wear dress shoes
Where'd
anymore.
that come from?
I just wore enough dress shoes playing and traveling around. I'm like, so it's always sneakers of some sort. And I don't really think dress socks and sneakers are the way for me to go. So that's partially why I also don't wear socks. But I do. I wear the no-show.
Yeah. Last question on the being between the benches. Any close calls? The face still looks impeccable, but any close calls with sticks or bodies or pucks flying in there?
Oh, there's been a couple, but I would say I'm pretty active. They even showed a couple of times, when the puck or a body or stick is getting ready to go by the benches and they see me move. Of course, they got to put it in slow motion so they get the whole, like, me turning around, hiding away. But, like, the sticks, you just got to be aware. I think, the one thing I try not to keep my hands in my pockets because every now and then, you just want to warm up your hands. But then you can't block. So if the stick comes through, I've got a couple where it's, hit my forearm and I was blocking my head. So I definitely blocked it. But
like back to the fighting days, right?
Yeah, yes. Pairing, But no, it hasn't been extra close. I've had a bad dream once about that, actually, when it first when everything unfolded. Like, yeah, we're going to get you down the bench. And I'm like, man, I don't really usually remember dreams, but I actually remembered getting hit with the puck. And I'm like, this better not come true. Because if I lose my teeth, because I have not lost a tooth in all of my NHL games.
Knock on wood.
Oh, well, I'm not playing an NHL game anytime soon. So I made it through my NHL career without losing a tooth. And I'm like, this is not the way I'm going to lose a tooth. So obviously it has not happened yet. So we'll knock on that one. But, I definitely, it's come across the mind a few times.
Yeah. It has been an incredible year for this team. And all the things they've accomplished during the season, being the third worst team last year, that being the Seattle Kraken, and coming back and getting 100 points this year. They get into the playoffs. They've made noise. They've made history. In your eyes, what has been the biggest turnaround from last season to this year?
I think the offseason moves definitely help. If you look at, the position Seattle put themselves in, whether, you're looking at the expansion draft and making some moves at the year one's trade deadline, really put them in a real good spot this summer to land, a couple of players that definitely have helped the team. But if you look at, how they play, I think even going towards year one and the end of the year, you could see them starting to figure out, starting to play together, starting to gel. So that, going into year two, you add a couple of pieces and, for good on them for fitting right. Because you never know. Mm-hmm. you see it all the time. We're going to get this player, but it ended up just not working. Well, for Seattle, it's worked. And their mindset from day one, obviously they've been a hardworking team. That hasn't changed. You go through the system-wise, and now they're starting to understand and starting to read each other. I mean, as a hockey player, how important it is to be able to have that be second nature and not be thinking about, hey, we're going into a whole new team with all new players. Maybe some played together, but not, as a collective together. And you're seeing what they're doing. They're not thinking anymore. It's second nature to them being out on the ice. And I know what you're going to do before you even get the puck. And you can see that chemistry and the connections, from top line down to your fourth line, D pairing 1 to D pairing 3, like, that's been something that's been fun to watch and to see that connection, not just on one line, not just on the guys who were on the team last year and this year, but even when you pull in new guys, that they're all buying in, that they're understanding that process and they're going through it together. I mean, for me, again, obviously you love seeing that quick turnaround. It's been fun to watch, but again, you just watch that chemistry and how they've been able to just click right from the get-go.
We could go down the entire list of guys that are on the active roster, guys that are hurt, guys that are in the minor leagues, players that have made a certain contribution to the Seattle Kraken over the course of this year. And as well as anybody, from season to season, you're going to need a lot of guys. It's never just the 20 guys that are on your roster or just the 18 skaters that are going on night-to-night basis. I'm going to make it hard on you, and I'm going to ask for one player this year that you thought made the greatest impact. Now, I know that is a loaded question. Like I said, we could go down the list and say, this guy had a great season, that guy had a great season. But if you had to pick one player on this roster that you thought maybe exceeded expectation or just had one of the biggest impacts on this team, who would that be and why?
Can I go quickly and pick one forward, one defenseman?
Do it.
Okay. So on the defense side, I think you gotta go with Vince Dunn. You look at the strides that he made from last year into this year, and it's the consistency, right? Like, he was good. He had plenty of good games and great games last year, but it's the consistency of he was putting them together. I think, what did he have? 11 game point streak this year, like
team record, yeah.
And he's able to. He's had a couple of those longer streaks too, where he's been consistent playing. Obviously, with Adam Larson all year, it helps. He knows what Adam Larson's going to do. Adam Larson knows what he's going to do on the ice. So that's definitely helped. But if you look at the jump from last year, this year, the power play minutes, getting out there, having that confidence. And then on the forward side, it's a tough one. I think it's hard not to pick Jared McCann and the year that he had. But I am not going to pick Jared McCann in the year he had. I'm going to pick Matty Beniers. Obviously, he got a 9-game. Was it 9? Yeah, 10 games last year. Just a little snippet of what he could do. 10 games. Yep. Obviously.
Yeah. 10 games, 9 points.
See, I knew to see the 9 and 10 they were there.
It is confusing.
No, but then you go into this year and you get a full season as a rookie to be able to do what he's done, obviously playing heavy minutes, crucial situations, being out there on the power play, but his defensive mindset too, not just only thinking about that offensive end. Obviously, he put up some really good numbers. My vote, which don't have a vote, but my vote for Rookie of the Year in the NHL should be Matty Beniers. So it's hard for me not to pick him as making that contribution. And obviously, we didn't get a long period of time with him last year, but for him to continue doing what he did last year into a full NHL season. It was special and not easy to do, especially being young and, your first full NHL season.
And to a degree, situations are different, but what it's like going from college to the NHL, similar to what he did. Like I said, situations are a little bit different. What's that transition like?
Oh, it's quick. I mean, you find out. I'll tell you my wake-up moment quickly. It was I got hit by Dustin Byfuglien.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's a train.
Yeah, I was like, we're not, this isn't college anymore. There's nobody who is playing like that can move, could be his size, have the hands that he has, skate like he does. Now, obviously, he's he's on his own when it comes to that. The guy's I love Dustin. He's a good dude, but he hit me. And he also took it easy on me because I trained with him. I skated with him in the summer. he didn't even hit me that hard. And I was like, oh boy, this is the National Hockey League.
Welcome to the league.
This isn't college anymore. And you kind of always have that moment, right? But it also reminded me, I'm like, all right, you know what? I got to be in the gym even more next summer because I just got hit by him one. I only played 5 games my first year. I'm like, okay, so for 82 games, like you got to be ready for this. So for me, that was kind of my moment. Like everyone, whether they have it or they look back and they find it, but for him to be able to jump in, the speed is so much faster. You don't have as much time to make those decisions, and the difference between say 1 through 4 in college is a lot wider than 1 through 4 in the National Hockey League. You're getting the best players in the world on a nightly basis. And for him to continue to perform, not be shied in the situations, and you go through, obviously, that first game, wild, you have the nerves, you have, this is what you've worked your life for, but to continue to put in that work in the summer so that your first full year is as successful as it has been, you got to give him all the credit.
I said this, I think it was one of our first shows, and this was a real big leap of faith before he even played this whole season. And I talked about this in one of the preseason shows that we did on Root. And just looking at Matty Beniers' 200-foot game, you can feel free to comment on this or not, but I really think that as good of a 200-foot player as he's been this year, and if that continues to grow, I would not be surprised at one time or another in his career he might be considered one of the best defensive forwards in the league, could be even a Selke trophy in his future. How important is that in the fabric of his game in your mind? Because, look, there have been stretches for Matty this year where the points haven't been there, but the 200-foot game has.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say there. Like, there's going to come times where you're not on the score sheet for the goal or the assist, but he's always making an impact. If you have a 200-foot game, you are always making that impact on the game. Yes, it might not show up on the score sheet. I don't think you're wrong. I think that's a great take. I still go back to, watching those first couple of games, and, you get the questions like, hey, what do you think he's going to do here? What he's going to do? I'm like, I don't know, because I don't tell the future. I don't see. But what I can tell is he's smart enough to play. Can't always tell if he's going to be a 40-goal or 50-goal scorer, but I can tell you the guy has smarts, and he's showing it nightly, whether it's his reads on the back check, his commitment to getting that 200-foot game all the way down, starting the forecheck the other way, and you can tell pretty quickly if the guy has the smarts, and without a doubt, he's smart enough to play this game. We've saw it all year, but that contributes to that 200-foot game and his reads that he makes out there on the ice.
And he's getting a great taste of what the playoffs are like right now. And with that, I want to tap into your playoff experience. You played 41 games of playoff hockey, including that incredible run in 2015 with the Tampa Bay Lightning, where you played 24 games in the postseason that year. To put it simply, what is playoff hockey like?
It's physical. It's intense. It's hard. I mean, it is hard to explain, but when you play the same team potentially 7 times in a row, it's hard. It is a grind. And I think the hardest part about the playoffs, not only is the physical part hard, but it's the mental part. It's going, for the most part, every other day. You might get an extra day break in there, but you're playing a lot of hockey against the same team. And then you got to go, if you win, you got to turn around, shut that switch off. Yeah, hey, congrats, we won the first round. Well, now we're on round 2. And if you go to round 2, you got to do it again for round 3. So staying mentally locked in, mentally prepared, because we know the stakes are very high in the playoffs. One mistake could be the win or loss. Well, in the regular season, it's still the same way, but you got another game to play just to get to the playoffs. You could be going home because of one mistake. So it's the mental side of the game. Obviously, it ends up being a long stretch if you make that whole run, but it's worth it. It's worth every minute. It's worth every ice bag, every block shot you have, every hit you take, every hit you give out. Physically, it's demanding on you. Mentally, it's demanding on you, but there's nothing better.
The composure of this team facing some of the adversity that they have, not just all year, but especially in the playoffs. How impressed have you been with the collective unit, showing that composure through the ups and downs of a playoff series?
Well, I mean, it's been fantastic. That goes to the leadership in the room, obviously the coaching staff as well. But Seattle has players that have been in the position, right? that have won the Stanley Cup, that have made runs, have played those games. And I think that's so important because you can get caught in the ups and downs. If we go back to game one, you have the 2-goal lead. It goes away. You're on your heels for the majority of the third period because Dallas is pressing. Could have been very easy to not have the composure to go out and, you know what, oh man, the moment's too big right now. It's not. Get to overtime, go back in the room, you reset, and they come back out with that mentality. They end up getting the win anyways, but for the most part, you see the ups and downs. And you can see how they handle it and how they've been able to respond when a team scores a goal, whether it was Colorado or whether it was Dallas game one. Even the push in game two towards the end, and a guy like Eberle comes up clutch with the goal to bring it within two. The composure's there. I think that, again, great job by the staff, obviously bringing in the right players, coaching staff as well. And then you look at the players themselves, because at the end of the day, coaches can say a whole lot, but at the end of the day, it's got to come from the room.
Mm-hmm. That experience comes from guys that have been there and done it. You got 7 Stanley Cup champions in that dressing room, 3 guys that have won multiple cups. So though they maybe haven't made a run together, they got guys in that room that know what it takes, without a doubt. In your mind, what do you think is the biggest thing that they learned from that Colorado series win, to beating the reigning, defending Stanley Cup champions, and something that they can bring into this? I know we're 2 games into the Dallas series, but with that being said, what was something you thought they maybe learned in the Colorado series?
I won't necessarily say I think it's a learned thing, but I think they already had the belief. If you listen to anybody talk, obviously don't care what the outside noise says, but I think beating the defending Stanley Cup champions, it definitely solidifies that. Obviously, I know that they believe in that locker room, but now you've taken out the team that won it last year. So I think that gives you that confidence. They're able to show that they can play with anybody. They did throughout the regular season as well. Well, will they be able to do it in the playoffs? Well, they did. They showed it. They proved it. And again, I think it's just solidifying that. And again, I just watched the forecheck in the Colorado series. You look at it in game 1 versus Dallas too. They play like that, they're going to give anybody trouble. Doesn't matter. And they have that belief, and taking down the defending champs definitely, solidifies that one in.
Watching game 2 last night and looking ahead, what'd you think of game 2? You spoke a little bit to game 1, but what were your thoughts on game 2 against Dallas? And then, looking forward to games 3 and 4 at Climate Pledge Arena.
Yeah, no, I think they had their moments within the game. We always talk about a 60-minute game, and I always laugh because it's kind of hard to play a 60-minute game. Because at the end of the day, the team's going to push back. There's going to be times where the other team has the puck, but I think they're on their heels a little bit. I think Dallas came out, they weren't happy they lost. They pushed in the first period. Seattle was able to get a little push back, but for me, I look at the penalties. You got to be disciplined in whether you agree with the calls or not able to speak on that too much, right? Hey, someone's going to disagree at all times, but you still put yourself in that position, and they have a great power play. Only 1 credited power play goal, but in my mind too, because the guy gets out the box, not able to get into play.
Right.
Technicality, obviously the stats will say 1. So you got to be a little bit more disciplined against the team, and then get that forecheck rolling. I didn't think they got a lot of zone time. Continued zone time, and then too many easy exits for Dallas, and that's, feeds their transition. That helps them get moving, up the ice. So definitely there were some times, I think especially first period, didn't have as many shots as you'd like to, passing up a few opportunities. It's just, you got to play desperate at all times. Obviously mentally fatiguing, it's physically fatiguing, but I think there was push. I think they showed their fight, at times, but at the time, there's another team out there. Give Dallas credit. They played themselves a really good game, and this is why it's not a race to 3. It's not. You got to win 4.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just playing who's going to win the best of 3 series, the best of 5. It's the best of 7. So you got to be able to do this over the course of an entire series. Seattle did their job. Got one on the road. Now you have home ice advantage going into what is now a best of 5 series. So at the end of the day, you don't want to over change things because of game 2. It's just one game. But obviously their bread and butter all year has been the forecheck, and it just didn't seem like they were able to get that going.
Yeah. Phenomenal insight. JT, thank you so much for your kind words and everything that you taught all of us today. To end, I did want to give a couple of rapid fire words.
Okay.
This is something new we're doing for the first time, so I wanted to save something special for you.
Okay.
I just thought of this the other day. So I'm going to give you a word, or sometimes it's more than one word, and I would like a one-word response of what you think about this, what I ask you.
Okay.
Okay? You ready?
Yes.
All right. Seattle.
Kraken.
Minnesota.
Winter.
Hockey.
Puck.
Fortnite.
Oh, well, Rapscallion.
Call of Duty.
I don't know. Well, the word, never, I can't. I'm going to have to go to a secondary one.
Okay.
I'm going to go with slide cancel.
John Forsland.
Legend.
Eddie Olczyk.
Legend.
John Forsland and Eddie Olczyk.
I'm going to change the one. The second thing that came to my mind when Eddie Olczyk came up was ice cream.
Okay. John Forsland and Eddie Olczyk.
Crazy.
Lily Brown.
Double crazy.
Booker Brown.
I'll say I can't chirp my kids. You know what? Lily is. She's a wild child. She's a wild child.
You can use more than one word.
Booker.
For the kids.
He's my gamer.
Yeah. Awesome. Minnesota high school hockey.
The best.
Playoff hockey in the National Hockey League.
There's nothing like it. It is, so one word, but irreplaceable.
Yanni Gord.
He is a gnat. You know, he's a little annoying. Just get away from me. Like, why do you keep getting on the forecheck? Why is this, when they're all around your head, they're just buzzing. Yeah, that's my word for him.
Kraken fans.
The best in the NHL.
And
Can't just use one.
No, of course. And last but not least, the Stanley Cup.
The ultimate prize that I never got to touch.
It's okay, JT. You had a hell of a career.
No, thank you.
Hey, thanks for coming on, buddy. This was a lot of fun. A lot of people learned some great things about you, and obviously your insight with the team and everything. So appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of the ride, buddy.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, anytime. It doesn't have to be 6, 7. You want to wait like 20 or 30 episodes. That's fine. But I'll come back on anytime you want.
All right, JT. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Signals from the Deep is the official podcast of the Seattle Kraken, hosted by Nick Olczyk and produced by me, Grant Beery. Have a question for Nick? Leave a voicemail on the Signals from the Deep hotline at 206-279-7810, or send an email to signals@seattlekraken.com. Your question could be featured on an upcoming episode.